Story that's breaking right at the top of news amidst India-Canada's diplomatic war. Now, Khalistani groups today are protesting outside the Indian High Commission, and an alert has been sounded in Canada across all Indian security establishments or Indian government establishments. Security tightened at the Indian High Commission in Ottawa as well as embassies across that country. So, in the Indian taking no chances as Khalistani extremists are hitting the street. Anisha Mathur, our correspondent, joins me live from Toronto at the moment. Anisha, these protests presumably being called by Khalistani extremist groups, how seriously are the Canadian authorities taking it, given the fact that they are accused in the past of being extremely lenient with these Khalistani groups? Is there a large presence on the ground?
Rajdeep, the Canadian police has tightened security outside the consulate here in Toronto. I can show you right here the barricading that has been put up. There are police officials around this entire street right now. Not just the Toronto Metropolitan Police, but also, if you can see behind me, these large SUVs. This is the presence of the Federal Royal Canadian Police. The Federal RCP is also here. Barricading, of course, police presence. They are scattered across the street right now. But what we are seeing really is that arrangements like this, ensuring police presence, is something that reporters here are telling me that the Canadian government always does, whether whichever protest it may be. They will allow the protesters to protest as long as nothing goes wrong, that there is no violence, there is no call for violence. And that is why I'm just going to turn around and show you around here the police presence that is here in the area. There are officials, media persons of course also have started to gather. But mostly what we are seeing is that the protesters are expected to reach here in another half an hour to 1 hour. This, of course, being the building where the consulate office is. Both entrances have been have police presence here. People's IDs are being checked here very regularly. But Canada seems to be taking the issue quite seriously, but whether or not they will take action against the Khalistani extremists is something that India has been constantly asking. Rajdeep.
Okay, Anisha Mathur joining us there at the high security now, which is slowly being put outside the embassy and consulates across Canada. Now, all of this, of course, happening at a time when that escalating diplomatic war is taking place, a war of words after the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. These separatists are threatening the Indian diplomatic missions, but amidst the growing tensions, the fact is that Canada finds itself in a prickly spot. How are relations between the two countries playing out on the ground in Canada? Anisha Mathur reports from Ottawa, the Canadian capital.
The India-Canada showdown escalates. Khalistani extremists have planned demonstrations against the killing of one of India's most wanted fugitives, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. They have threatened to shut down New Delhi's diplomatic mission in Ottawa. The aggression comes after Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, chief of the banned Khalistani outfit Seeks for Justice, issued a video threatening Hindus living in Canada to leave the country. The frequent threats by Khalistani extremists have made the Hindu community wary. In Toronto, India today found that Hindu shrines are taking many precautionary measures in view of the warnings.
जो आप बोल रहे हैं कि हम लोग डर रहे हैं, डेफिनेटली डरना पड़ेगा, क्योंकि सब घर में ये बातें चर्चा हो रही है. सरदार जी हमारे फ्रेंड्स जो है वो भी बोल रहे हैं कि कोकपियन बाहर मत जाना अकेले, ये लोग की भरोसा नहीं है इनका.
Meanwhile, the Canadian government is caught in a diplomatic quagmire after Prime Minister Justin Trudeau accused India of a role in the killing of Khalistani terrorist Nijjar on Canadian soil. Canadian Defence Minister Bill Blair has affirmed Canada's commitment to pursue partnership while investigation into the killing continues.
There is a very significant concern that Canada will have with respect to the violation of our sovereignty and the murder of a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil. And at the same time, I also want to acknowledge the importance of the Indo-Pacific strategy. We've been working very hard over the past several years, and most recently in building trade agreements in the region, and through the Canadian Armed Forces, we have been increasing our presence and patrols in the region. And so the Indo-Pacific region, including our relationship with India, is important to us.
The Canadian government is under pressure both at home and abroad to produce evidence to back Trudeau's charges against India. Trudeau's comments have put not just Canadian ties with India in jeopardy but have landed his Western allies also in a soup. With Anisha Mathur in Toronto, Bureau Report, India Today.
And joining me now is a very special guest from Vancouver, Canada, joined by Ujjal Dosanjh. He is a former minister in the Liberal Party government, has been Premier of British Columbia, and is someone who knows Justin Trudeau rather well. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Dosanjh. Given all that has happened in the last week with India-Canada relations, it started with Justin Trudeau claiming there was a potential link of the Indian government to the killing of Mr. Nijjar there in Canada. What's your sense? Is Justin Trudeau doing this, as many believe, for his domestic constituency, or is he convinced about this Indian government link? Where is he coming from?
Well, there may be an element of domestic politics in how he's handled this. But it's quite well known that Globe and Mail, the major newspaper in Canada, was about to reveal it on the front pages of its newspaper. And they approached the government and told the government. And I think Mr. Trudeau then scrambled and made the remarks in the House that he did. I think there's a widely held perception in Canada, which takes into account both issues. It's believed that he needed something for domestic consumption because his polling numbers are low, but it's also believed that he needed to get ahead of the story because the newspapers were going to make it public. So
just a minute, you're telling us something big. You're saying that you believe the story was about to be broken in Canadian newspapers. This reached Trudeau, and that's what prompted him to go public with it. Am I correct?
Oh, that's part of the story here, part of the facts here on the ground in Canada. Yes.
There is also the belief, though, that he is supported by the likes of Jagmeet Singh Dhaliwal, the MP from Burnaby South, who belongs to the New Democratic Party of Canada. They support his Liberal government. Were there coalition pressures that have led Trudeau to be seen as soft on those who openly advocate a separate nation of Khalistan?
Mr. Trudeau, even before Mr. Jagmeet Singh came on the scene, Mr. Trudeau was surrounded right from his leadership days by Khalistani sympathizers and supporters. And that's a widely held perception that he has a soft corner for them. And now, in fact, it's not coalition, but there is what's called a demand and confidence and supply agreement. And that is that, that given a vote in the House, the NDP would, led by Jagmeet Dhaliwal, would support the government unless they pull out of that agreement. And that, in fact, raises the other issue. If you are officially dependent on the likes of Jagmeet Singh and his party's support, and Jagmeet Singh himself, it's quite a well-known impression right across the country that he himself, I have seen his videos on the net in the past where he spoke on 6 sovereignty conferences. And he's spoken at other events. And it took him a long time to condemn Talvinder Parmar, the Air India bomber. So I think, and he has never he's never declared his commitment as a national leader of Canada to the unity and integrity of India, a friendly country. And the other problem I think we have in this country is that, it's appropriate for people to say, yeah, everybody has the right to free expression. We draw a line on violence. But nobody in Canadian politics of any stature has ever publicly said, yes, well and good, you have the right to speak your mind, you Khalistanis, but we don't support the idea of dismembering a friendly democracy, no matter how faulty it might be, faultier than ours perhaps, but still a friendly democracy. And that is where I fault the Canadian politicians.
Is that just Mr. Trudeau or across? Is that just Mr. Trudeau or across the board? Are Canadian politicians across the board not doing enough to take on those who advocate violence and separatism?
Oh, I think conservative politicians are slightly better on that score than the other politicians. But Liberal and NDP politicians, by and large, have never cautioned the Khalistanis. Look, control your activities. We don't believe in dismembering a friendly country. If they said that, if they had said that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would believe that Canada would not be home to a burgeoning Khalistani movement where none exists in Punjab, where I was in May of this year. There wasn't a saffron turban to be found in my big village.
So, in a way, you seem to be suggesting to me that there's been a high degree of tolerance, even co-option of these elements. Have they now begun to dictate the agenda to Trudeau, or do you believe that Trudeau comes from a point where he actually may have received, as some suggest, intelligence inputs from the Americans and others suggesting a role in Nijjar's killing?
Well, I think that on this issue, I have to believe him. He's the prime minister of the country I am a citizen of. I have to believe my prime minister.
But believe what? With due regard, sir, believe what? Believe a potential link? I mean, what does a potential link mean? Without hard evidence.
I must believe that he is telling the truth to the people when he speaks in the House. I don't know what a potential link means. They've talked about signals intelligence and communications intelligence. If they know who pulled the trigger, why is the RCMP still running around trying to identify the so-called assailants and the driver of the getaway car? And I understand that the getaway car was some 2008 Toyota or something. If the government of India was going to kill somebody, couldn't they afford something better? I don't know.
But how are the likes of Nijjar seen though in Canada among the Canadian Sikh community? I had a guest the other day who said 80 to 90% of Canadian Sikhs also have no time for any kind of violence linked to the Khalistani movement. Do you go along with that, or do you believe these groups have substantial support?
Oh, absolutely. I go along with, I in fact say 95% of Canadian Sikhs don't want to have anything to do with it. But, the problem is that everybody's busy making a living, raising their children and grandchildren. People like me, I've been doing this since the 80s. You get tired, you move on. But these guys, because the Khalistan lives in their heads, and they're isolated perhaps from the larger society here, and it gives them a cause, something larger than themselves, something outside of themselves to latch onto. It gives perhaps a meaning to their lives, but they carry on, and guys like us, people like us, don't have the time to fight them. And it's not my obligation, it is the obligation of the government of this country to send a message to the extremist elements in Canada who are trying to dismember a friendly country. Hey guys, that's not acceptable. Nobody's done that.
I want to ask you this, and I want to tell our audiences this first, that you were assaulted by Khalistanis outside a parking lot in February 1985 because you were publicly condemning the extremist elements. The assault resulted in a broken hand and 80 stitches on your head. Have people like you been targeted as well, even today?
I haven't. The last public threat I got was back in 2010, 2011. There hasn't been the opportunity to speak about this issue in the sense that it hasn't been in the public domain in the larger society. I only address sort of the mainstream issues. It's become a mainstream issue because of Mr. Trudeau's a reference to it in the House. And now, I mean, I have a choice to either keep quiet or say my piece, and I'm happy to say my piece.
Are you saying, therefore, that a majority of mainstream Canadians simply have no clue of what Khalistan is about? And even within the Canadian Sikh community, it is a small but vocal minority that is pushing the issue. Am I correct?
You are absolutely correct. The vast majority of Canadians don't even know what Khalistan is. Many of them might not even know where Punjab is, but the Indians in Canada, the Canadian Sikhs in particular, they are as proud Indians as the Punjabis and Sikhs in Punjab are, and we are civilizationally Indians, and to deny that fact is crazy, and to keep wanting to divide Hindus and Sikhs, who have, I see not much difference in terms of the communities. One of the problems is that in places like Canada, there is no healing process for the grievances or the hurt that you might carry in your head about 84, what happened in 84 in Amritsar or in Delhi. Whereas in India, you live together, you intermarry, you're seeing each other every day, you have friends and family, and there's a healing process. So Indian Sikhs have moved on. They know that Hindus in India don't hate Sikhs. Here, the narratives Khalistanis are trying to propagate is that Sikhs are persecuted in India. That's the basis of the continuing demand for separation.
How does Trudeau benefit from all of this? Surely his global image, if he's seen to be patronizing those accused of violence and separatism, doesn't get lifted. Do you believe that he's gambled big, therefore, by doing what he has, gone public in the manner that he has?
Well, I think he's damaged himself, as I said before. He's damaged himself as the most important diplomat for our country. So therefore, he's taken himself out of the equation for being the interlocutor on behalf of Canada. If he has to speak to India, he needs someone else from his government or from this country. And there are lots of people who can do that. These kinds of issues, they have to be resolved at the table, not shouting across international borders. And there's no question there's a bit of look, if India did what it's alleged to have done, it would give India a black eye in the international arena. But, India wouldn't be the first to have done that. That's not to say I'm taking it lightly, but, US and Russia and others have been known to do that with the Iranian general or with Osama bin Laden. And so let's not be holier than thou. That's not to suggest that I accept what India has done as the appropriate thing, if India has done it.
But if India has done it, will Nijjar be seen as some kind of a martyr, and will Canadians respond very differently? Or will they say, look, as you said, other countries in defense of their national interests may well take to extraterritorial killings?
Oh, well, I mean, look, I don't think that anyone in Canadian politics is going to take it lightly. I don't think they should, but that's a different matter. Realpolitik tells you that countries do this. That doesn't mean it's acceptable. I think that Mr. Trudeau's image has taken a big hit in terms of international situation. The allies, the Five Eyes allies have been a bit mute on the issue. I mean, they've expressed, they've urged India to cooperate, and they said, look, we shared intelligence. But they've been somewhat mute because they know that this kind of situation shouldn't be allowed to damage the relationships between them and India, which are important to them. And I suggest that to Canada, India is very important as a democratic country, as an ally. I hope that this issue is resolved, both as an Indian by heritage and as a Canadian by citizenship. I hope it's resolved soon.
The fact is the Indian government has strongly denied the allegations that have been made by Prime Minister Trudeau. I just want to understand, though, from you, Mr. Dosanjh, Is there a new sort of perception of India now in Canadian eyes, given the fact that you've got so many young Indians now coming to Canada to study? We have more than 3 lakh Indians as we speak with student visas in Canada. Is India seen by the Canadians as an important country that you need to work with, and that soft power of India, whether it's cinema or cricket, is now becoming more and more important in Canada?
Well, it is. I mean, it is becoming more important. It's been important for some time. As I said, India has arrived internationally. And therefore, I think Canadians are aware that India is an important country. It can be an important ally. And there's no question that that's the case. But that's why I actually say to India, if India has done it, India would get a black eye, at least amongst those who think countries shouldn't be going across borders and killing people.
I want to ask you, though, in conclusion, there are lots of Indians, though, who still are angered by the fact that the Air India Kanishka bombing of 1985, those involved were not prosecuted. The Canadians botched up the investigation and people got away, and that gave many Khalistanis of today's generation possibly the impunity to believe they could get away with what they do in terms of publicly stating their stand on Canada's streets and advocating separatism and violence. Do you believe that is something, since you were there around at the time, that will continue to, will you appreciate India's concerns that Canada has not done enough either to prosecute or extradite or deport those allegedly involved?
I think Canada, bungled the Air India issue. It came late to the table on that issue. The inquiry was held like, 20 years later, judicial inquiry, and only one person has gone to jail with respect to that. And that's not good enough. Canadians believe it's not good enough. And that, as you argue, that may have given some sense of impunity to those who continue to work for the dismemberment of India sitting here on Canadian land.
Because India has given lists in the past of alleged Khalistani terrorists residing on Canadian soil, and the Indian argument is not enough has been done by the government in Ottawa to actually address India's concerns, be it on Kanishka or be it on other events.
Well, in terms of the list you talk about, look, India and Canada have an extradition treaty, and my view is, if you have the evidence, formally request the extradition. It was done in the case of a young woman who was murdered at her mother and uncle's behest. The mother and uncle are now sitting in India. They've been taken from here. They're facing trial in Punjab for that murder. So, there are other channels to deal with it. Simply handing a list of terrorists or alleged terrorists doesn't make for an extradition. And that is my concern. I think India should be active on the extradition front.
But you see, the perception that Canada has become a haven for terrorists, these are words being used by Indian government officials. Does that trouble you as someone who's been part of Canadian politics and India-Canada relations for years, that now today Indian officials are openly saying that Canada has become a haven for terrorists?
Well, it does trouble me because I'm both an Indian by heritage and Canadian by citizenship, and I go to India fairly regularly, and I love the idea of India that I grew up in. My grandfather spent 8 years in British jails fighting for the independence of the country. So I'm quite attached to the idea of India, and I want Canada and India to have good relations. But both governments need to work on it. And I think Canadian government has been remiss. Canadian politicians have been missing in action on this issue. They have not tried to dissuade Khalistanis from trying to dismember a friendly country. That is the bottom line, I think. If Canadian politicians actively took the position and said, hey guys, nothing doing. You cannot continue to argue for dismemberment of India. It's a friendly country. I believe that that Canada wouldn't be a place with a burgeoning movement for Khalistan where none exists in Punjab.
Ujjal Dosanjh, for speaking so freely and candidly and giving us a sense of a proud Canadian-Indian perspective. I appreciate your joining us here on the news today. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you.
Okay, to election news now. The story that's breaking: the Bharatiya Janata Party has released its second list of candidates for the crucial Madhya Pradesh Assembly elections that take place later this year. Union Minister Narendra Tomar will fight the Madhya Pradesh Assembly polls. Also, Union Minister Prahlad Patel, Fagan Singh Kulaste are in the fray. Kailash Vijayvargiya, the BJP's senior leader, also in the BJP list to contest from Indore. He hadn't contested in the last election. So clearly the BJP has decided to put up all its heavyweights in what promises to be perhaps the biggest battle of this winter election, the closest fight expected by many there in Madhya Pradesh. So you've got a situation where all the BJP's senior ministers at the center are now being told to contest the state elections to try and in a way build up momentum for the party. Remember, opinion polls have suggested a very tough fight there between the BJP and the Congress. Kamal Nath versus Shivraj Singh Chauhan. But now Mr. Chauhan will have to look over his shoulder and perhaps see other potential Chief Minister candidates if the BJP wins. The likes of Narendra Tomar and Kailash Vijayvargiya have never hidden their ambition to become Chief Minister of the state one day. Joining me now, Hemendra Sharma joins me from Bhopal. Hemendra, what explains this decision? Narendra Tomar, Kailash Vijayvargiya, Prahlad Patel, all of them will be seen as potential challengers if the BJP wins to Shivraj Singh Chauhan. Is the BJP sending out the message that we are not just about Shivraj Singh Chauhan, we have many other leaders also?
Well, it appears so, because Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in Bhopal today. He was addressing the Karyakarta Mahakumbh. The BJP claimed that 10 lakh workers from across the state had come to participate in that Kumbh, but not even once did Prime Minister Modi refer the name of Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan. Narendra Singh Tomar was the only leader who was available on the stage, on the dais, who gave a bouquet to Prime Minister Modi. Other than that, there were women from panchayat leaders to member of parliament who welcomed the Prime Minister and thanked him for the women reservation bill. But other than that, he never took the name of the Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh. And now it appears that the BJP has put its best foot forward. They have fielded 7 members of parliament, 3 union ministers and stalwarts like Kailash Vijayvargiya, and they'll be contesting elections. So it has become a very interesting contest in the days ahead.
Hemendra Sharma joining us there. Very interesting, the BJP deciding to put all its leaders from Delhi also in the battle in Madhya Pradesh. Amit Shah, remember, has been put in charge of the BJP's Madhya Pradesh campaign. Now, already the sounds of the elections are being heard. Prime Minister Modi was in a rally in poll-bound Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan today against the backdrop of the women's reservation bill being passed. He launched a scathing attack against the Congress, comparing the party to a company run by urban Naxals, he said. Meanwhile, Congress MP Rahul Gandhi was also in election-bound Chhattisgarh, hitting back at the BJP, calling it a party that works for billionaire corporates. Listen in to what was happening.
पहले बर्बाद हुई, अब बैंकरप्ट हुई, और अब कांग्रेस ने अपना ठेका दूसरों को दे दिया है। कांग्रेस को अब कांग्रेस के नेता नहीं चला रहे, अब कांग्रेस एक ऐसी कंपनी बन गई है, नारों से लेकर नीतियों तक हर चीज आउटसोर्स कर रही है। और ये ठेका किसके पास है जानते हैं? कांग्रेस का ठेका अब कुछ अर्बन नक्सलियों के पास है। कांग्रेस में अब अर्बन नक्सलियों की ही चल रही है। ये ग्राउंड पर कांग्रेस का हर कार्यकर्ता महसूस कर रहा है। इसलिए कांग्रेस जमीन पर भी लगातार खोखली हो रही है।
जैसे ही रिमोट कंट्रोल दबता है, एक तरफ अदानी जी को बंबई का एयरपोर्ट मिल जाता है, फिर से दबाते हैं, अदानी जी को रेलवेज का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट मिल जाता है, फिर दबाते हैं, इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर मिल जाता है। तो दो रिमोट कंट्रोल चल रहे हैं। ये हमारा वाला सबके सामने चलता है। बीजेपी दबाती है, पब्लिक सेक्टर प्राइवेटाइज हो जाता है। आपने 5 किसानों के कानून, काले कानून बनाए, उसमें उनको फायदा देने की कोशिश की। तो मैंने उनसे पूछा, नरेंद्र मोदी जी, आपका रिश्ता क्या है? उनके हवाई जहाज में आप जाते हो, रिश्ता क्या है? जवाब मिला, मेरी लोकसभा की सदस्यता रद्द कर दी।
Interesting on the election trail, Rahul Gandhi versus Modi yet again. Now, in a setback to the ruling NDA ahead of the 2024 Lok Sabha polls, the AIDMK has ended its alliance with the BJP in Tamil Nadu. The party leadership unanimously passed a resolution on Monday after what it called repeated attacks by state BJP chief Annamalai. What does all this mean? Take a look.
The BJP's southern mission has suffered a big jolt. The AIADMK has walked out of the National Democratic Alliance. The decision to part ways with the BJP was taken at a meeting chaired by former CM E. Palanisamy. The announcement was greeted with fireworks by the party cadre.
வருகின்ற 2024 நடைபெற இருக்கின்ற நாடாளுமன்ற தேர்தலில் அனைத்திந்திய அண்ணா திராவிட முன்னேற்ற கழகத்தின் தலைமையில் போற்றுதலுக்குரிய எங்களுடைய கழகத்தின் பொதுச் செயலாளருடைய தலைமையில் மற்ற கூட்டணியோடு இணைந்து தேர்தலை சந்திக்கும் என்பதை நாங்கள் தெரிவித்துள்ளோம்.
The AIADMK has been at loggerheads with the state BJP chief Annamalai, who had made comments against former CM J. Jayalalitha in the past. The latest flashpoint was his comment critical of Dravidian icon CN Annadurai. The AIADMK is incidentally named after Annadurai.
முத்துராமலிங்க தேவரையா சனாதன தர்மத்திற்காக என்ன பேசுறாருன்னு சொல்றது என்னுடைய கடமை. அத மதுரை மீனாட்சி அம்மன் கோயில்ல மறைச்சு பேச முடியாது, திருச்சி பேச முடியாது. அண்ணாதுரை அவர்களை எங்கேயும் நான் தவறா சொல்லல, எங்க தவறா சொன்னேன்? சரித்திரத்தில் இந்த சம்பவத்தை நான் எடுத்து காட்டியிருக்கிறேன். அதே போல யாரும் எங்களுடைய அடிமையும் கிடையாது. நான் சொல்லுகின்ற கருத்தை யாரும் ஏற்றுக்கொள்ள வேண்டிய அவசியம் இல்லை. தனி கட்சி, தனி கொள்கை.
If the AIADMK sticks to its decision, the BJP will have to form an alliance of its own in Tamil Nadu, a state where the party doesn't have much of a presence. Bureau Report, India Today.
So what does all this mean for Tamil Nadu politics? Remember, it's a state with 39 Lok Sabha seats. Joining me now, Kovai Satyan, AIADMK spokesperson, Sumant Raman, political analyst. The BJP doesn't at this stage want to officially respond to all that's been happening on the ground. But let me come to you, Mr. Satyan, at the very outset. What does this really all mean? At the end of the day, you won just one seat last time in Lok Sabha 2019. Will this breaking up of this alliance make any difference? What is the main reason why you've chosen to do it 6 months before the general elections?
Yeah, good evening, Rajiv. Good to be in your show after a long time. But you know it pretty well. Tamil Nadu is a swing vote policy state. 2014, we swept the entire MP seats. Then 2019, it is our rival DMK. And AIDMK is all set to rewrite history under our leader, EPS, 2024. So the stage is set. But however, being in an ally, there is something called a sanctity, alliance dharma. And there is a Lakshman Rekha. And our ally can't take us for granted on multiple occasions and try to test us.
No. So what happened? So what suddenly happened for you to wake up one day? Only a month ago, I saw Mr. Palanisamy here in Delhi with Prime Minister Modi at the NDA ally meeting. Suddenly, what has changed?
It is not sudden, Rajji. It is simmering for a quite long period of time. Calling out our founders, calling out our leaders, and passing remarks which are not palatable to the party headquarters as well as to the cadres. We indeed passed a resolution against the state leader, Mr. Annamalai, 2 months ago, and sent it to the High Command of BJP. So it is not a knee-jerk reaction or a one-day affair. This has been simmering for a quite long period of time, and finally the D-Day has come.
Okay.
BJP needs AIADMK in Tamil Nadu. It's not vice versa.
Okay, let me take that here. You make an interesting point. Suman, see Raman, according to the AIADMK, BJP needs them more than they need the BJP. At the same time, there is this rising profile of Annamalai as he goes on a yatra. Is this about individuals, therefore, the rise of Annamalai? Or is it simply that the AIADMK has realized that being with the BJP at this moment in a state like Tamil Nadu could be subject to diminishing returns?
Rajdeep, a few months ago, there was talk that at one of their internal meetings, Mr. Annamalai said he will resign if the alliance with the ADMK continued. Now, ever since that, he has gone almost single-handedly on a mission to wreck the alliance with speeches which no alliance partner, no self-respecting party will tolerate. Look, the AIADMK has been possibly one of the most docile and loyal allies of the BJP, for years now. And to the extent that they were ridiculed in the state, they were lampooned, they were called a slave party of BJP. People used to just say, Adimai. Adimai is basically equivalent to a slave in Tamil. So that was the extent to which the AIADMK bowed before the BJP. But Mr. Annamalai seems to have decided for some reason that they had to be pushed out of the alliance. And first was the remark about Jayalalitha's corruption and so on. And then was the remark about Mr. Annadurai running away from Madurai and so on, which by the way is factually not backed up by any kind of evidence. And subsequently, the AIADMK initially ignored. They thought the BJP High Command was, overlooking some of these things. But when it became clear that the BJP High Command was sort of, playing a double game, as it were, and letting Mr. Annamalai take them on, I think at that point it became clear that they had to call it quits.
No, but could it be strategic? Yeah. Could it be, Sumant, a deliberate strategy for the BJP to either lead a new third front in Tamil Nadu by targeting both the Dravidian parties? They have nothing to lose. They didn't win a seat there last time. So the opportunity to project Annamalai as a leader of a third front taking on both the Dravidian parties, is that part of the strategy?
Rajdeep, Annamalai started off extremely well. And about a year ago, it did look at one stage that the BJP would emerge as a major force in Tamil Nadu. The last 6 to 8 months, much of the sheen has gone off. He's gone, he's seen as something of a loose cannon. You don't know what he will say next and who he will go after. Hardly any evidence has been put up to back any of his claims. He makes corruption charges. He at one point said he was going to release a list of corruption charges against ADMK leaders when he was still in the alliance. So I think that you'll get the picture.
No, but who needs it? But who needs who more? Does Annamalai?
Both parties need each other. This is a setback to both parties. But from the AIADMK's long-term survival strategy, this is possibly the right decision that Mr. Edappadi Palaniswamy has taken. Obviously, now he will have to back it up by going to the people and vigorously opposing the DMK, because there is a very sizable anti-DMK vote which used to be traditionally the AIADMK's vote bank in Tamil Nadu. The BJP is trying to take a portion of that, and that means in the 2024 Lok Sabha elections, it will be advantage DMK Congress combined at the moment.
Very interesting. A final word there for Mr. Satyan. Is this therefore the AIADMK with its back to the wall? Ever since J. Jayalalitha passed away, you've struggled. You've struggled with internal battles, the Paneer Selvam camp versus the Palaniswamy's camp. Now, there's a sense you're without the BJP. Are you going to form another front with smaller parties? Where does the AIADMK go from here? Or will you join hands with the BJP again after the elections, as many suspect?
Yeah, all troubles, what you narrated, all done and dusted, Rajdeep. EPS is now scripting the third episode of AIADMK. When the party started, it was 16 lakh members, and Porchi Thalevi Amma made it to 1.5 crore. Under EPS, third phase, the party has now surpassed 2 crores of cadres, which is 20% of Tamil Nadu population and 33% of the voters, eligible voters in TN. So let us not negate the fact that all is well in the AIDMK camp under the single leadership of EPS. Now the battle is all set. We have to go and fight out the battle, and the booth level committees are formed. It's all set. So the game is on by now, and the few parties who are with DMK have started to show interest, and there are signals from the DMK camp as well to join under the leadership of EPS.
So it's
day is big in politics, and the coming days are going to be really big for Tamil Nadu political circles and for AIDMK.
We'll wait and see how this all plays out. As I said, Tamil Nadu remains a key state because of the sheer number of seats for the Lok Sabha. Is it really advantage DMK Congress, as Sumant Raman seems to suggest, or is the will the AIDMK live to fight another day? We'll wait and see. For now, I appreciate both my guests joining me here on our other talking point.